Okay. Hello, everyone. Okay. Okay, guys, it should be working now. I don't know. It should be working. Anyways. So, to continue, guys, bear with me. Through these recent life changes, my rhythms been different. My perception's been different. Anyways, I'll go back to it. Pretty much, the idea that I wanted to share was that pretty much I was walking through a mall, and I've been talking about for a decade about advanced civilizations and the advanced humanity. And for the first time, a very strange approach and perspective arose. Okay, and that perspective was that for a second, I felt that this planet is a barn. Okay, you heard me correctly. I said barn. Okay, and this doesn't mean that I'm treating everybody like farm animals. Okay, but I'm what I mean by this is simply this idea that just like an animal in a barn, if, let's say a wild animal is domesticated, I've come into this impression that the human species can be seen as a sort of a multidimensional animal that has domesticated itself, self-domesticated itself. As if we're this entity that has used language to contain itself and to forget its own wilderness. I gave these 4 videos. I was a bit emotional, and I moved the videos into the membership area, right? But in those videos, I was referring to myself as a broken person, okay? And so I was speaking to someone yesterday, and how they had gone through something very intense, and they came through it with rather than a detachment from an emotional detachment from reality, they restored their emotions in reality. For me, I don't know what's happening with me, but what it is that I've come into this attitude of a detachment from emotional expectation. What this means is that I haven't let go of my, let's say, analytical expectation, my logical expectation from reality, but the expectation I have let go, the emotional expectation I have let go, is that I am not connecting my emotions to others. And this perception, this attitude of mine arose because of this perception. I mean, it's not a nice view, okay? But for a moment, I thought that, I'm in this, imagine we're all animals in this barn, okay? And so the animals in the barn, they're bound by the boundary of the barn, okay? And they're all waiting for the farmer to come in and feed them. For a second, I thought that the farmer in this situation would be truth, okay? Or I wondered if the farmer, it could be even our free will. You know what it is? I felt, a week ago, very broken as a human being. Not as a human being per se, but just as a being. I felt broken in the sense that the expectations of the inner realms, which had for me a very huge intensity and a sort of force behind it. At first, I thought it was a sense of losing faith in people. I had this sense that, okay, you go through life, you have different experiences, and at some point, these experiences leave an impression on you that is like unchangeable, right? Even Carl Jung spoke about it. Certain yogis spoke about a type of virtue, a virtue that you have prior to, a virtue that is there in accordance to the individual being's innocence. But then there's a virtue where that innocence is broken, and then the person returns, restores, comes back to that sense of virtue. So think of it this way: a virtue without collisions and a virtue after collisions. Life is honestly taking me to an interesting point. I wanted to even share this talk called "My Spirituality is Not Spirituality." I've recently come into this awareness way more that we as human beings should not worship people. Now, what's even funnier than that, than the idea of, let's say, worshiping people, is that we are a person and the individual can worship themselves. Your inner realms can give you a suggestion of who you may be or who you were or who you can be. And then for a second you may disconnect, from the outer realms where there's other inner realms and the outer realms. It's kind of fascinating, the human position, right? We've been given an inner life which we only have access to. There are so many ways we may find the moment present. I guess I won't hold back and I'll just go into it, okay? So the way that the problem I've proposed for myself in this episode to attempt to solve in this episode is the problem that I've written. Honestly, I couldn't decide between the two titles. I couldn't decide Time to Fix a World of Broken People or Time to Fix a Broken World, right? But I will focus on Time to Fix a World of Broken People, okay? And so if we were to consider that something had happened, so it would be a perspective where, let's say the species became very advanced in give it like 50 to 100 years, people started to live in a very advanced way. Or I don't know, let's say like 1,000 years passed and we developed a very advanced civilization. And then imagine some event came and broke this advancement of humanity like a complete mirror. It shattered it into many various pieces. So the solution of a broken world would be that the pieces in it that are broken to reassemble. All right, objectively. So when an object breaks, in order for us to fix it, right, we put the pieces back together, right, or we take its initial design and we recreate something new and move into that, right? That technically isn't fixing, but it fixes the problem, at least for the individual, right? So it would be as if, imagine you were a vase. Okay, you were a vase or like a glass cup on a table. Okay, as an object, if you're broken, reassemble the parts. But now if a subject is broken, if the sense of self is broken, and I'm not talking about as intense as psychological fragmentation, like a soldier going to war, doing something so traumatic, and then having a sort of split personality after that, you know, and not knowing which to be subconsciously. The idea I'm trying to propose here is this, okay? I tried to seek completion, went towards a solution for my own life. And then eventually at some point I broke. And this sense of breaking made me realize, at first the reaction was to the outer realm. So it would be equivalent to, like, imagine, you know, you have a cup of tea, you've prepared it, it took you like a while to prepare a cup of tea, you know, you're just waiting for it to cool down to drink it, and somebody comes and slams it, you know, slams the cup of tea, you know, with the same intensity as somebody who would like dunk a basketball. Slam it like that to the ground, you know. So at that point, you know, the individual, you know, who had a sort of archetypal position, had something that was contained, the container breaks, whether through the outer realms, and sometimes you can even break yourself. Why do you think they say don't do wrong actions? Why do you think there is guilt, sin, regret? Why? Right? Because to make us realize that we cannot step in all the ways that we desire, that there are ways that the world will correct us. And sometimes when you break, life shows you what you are. You know, one of the most incredible things I've heard this year was someone was saying that when a person doesn't get what they want, their true nature comes out. And this was so fascinating to me, right? Because not all the things we want are physical. Sometimes they're internal, right? And sometimes when the person has an intention or something they're working towards and they don't get it in the inner realms, they get to see their own nature, and it has nothing to do with others. They get to see who they are when they don't get what they wanted to give themselves, if that makes sense. And by the way, guys, you know, I'm going to encourage this. Whoever you are, if you're listening to this, just engage in the chat section and write down, you know, your thoughts or your views on this. You know, these talks, hopefully, these live streams, you know, get more of a conversation vibe. So anyways. So, you know, I'll share this too. There was this old couple, and this young girl goes to the couple and says, you know, you've been married for like 40 years successfully. How do you guys do it? You know, nowadays everybody's getting divorced and all this. And the old couple said, we come from a time when things would break, we would fix them. But now people are in a time that rather than fixing what's breaking, right, they just move on to something else, right? So even though technology progress has given us a freedom of choice, our freedom of choice has made us actually not really care to fix things and to just move forward. Now, granted, there are some things a person can't fix. Let's say you miscommunicate, or you get into some sort of argument or conflict with someone and you break some hearts, and your own heart gets broken as well, right? So it is true that some situations you gotta just accept what's broken and move on, but the things that can be fixed should be attempted to be fixed. Okay. Because from a transcendental perspective, an individual could give up so easily and think it's the right thing. I could just be like, yo man, I ain't physical, why should I care about the outer realms? Why should I care to fix a broken world, let's say, if it is broken? Sometimes when you experience a moment where your own self doesn't make sense to you, you get this feeling to give up on the inefficiency. But if a person has, let us say, an unbreakable faith, and when I say an unbreakable faith, what do I mean? I mean, you have to trust something if you want to move in this reality. When I say I don't have an emotional expectation on others anymore, it doesn't mean that I've been I'm like, okay, no longer release the emotions in the outer realms. It's more like, this has recently happened with individuals in my life as well, where I just realized that when a person cares, or when a person likes someone, they're opening themselves up. But when they realize how they have opened themselves up is not, what's the term, congruent to the other, or it's another way of saying we're like these invisible actors, okay, and we're doing this visible performance, and a part of this visible performance in our inner realms is visible to us, and of course others cannot understand us, right? There is this emotion. I don't know why this is in the human experience. I think it'll be short-lived for the species, but there is this emotion that when an individual doesn't know what to do, they wait. They wait for something else to come and move them. If you look at most people's prayers, it's actually wanting something else to come and interfere. It's so funny. When I was younger, I was like this object that had heard the ideas of like the soul and whatnot. The mind. The mind is still mysterious. It's like when I was younger, the other world was fascinating. Now that I'm older, this world is fascinating. The divine mysteries associated to the human experience are as fascinating as the divine mystery associated to the world and anything else. Sometimes I even get the feeling that we are here to understand how to be an entity, not that we're an entity of incredible power, that has, mistakenly fallen down here. The idea is, how can we fix something if we cannot be responsible for it? And in order to be responsible for something, we have to look at it accurately. That means if there's a broken vase, all right, and somebody's like, yo, man, there's no problem here. Everything's fixed. I try, it's like everything's great. There are no accidents. But then it would be the situation where, we haven't looked at what's broken, so we don't understand what we can fix. And I think that's what's important, that sometimes you have to look at yourself, and you might right now be the most powerful, great, successful individual. And I'm not telling you that, forget that. All I'm telling you is that look at what may be broken. Because if you don't look at it properly, how can you fix it? And what does even fixing something broken mean? It doesn't mean that it will become the same as before. Right? There was this Japanese video where anything that breaks, they use like this golden, I don't know, some sort of golden substance to kind of put it in the cracks of the broken vase, right? To kind of suggest that, once you go through something that breaks you, doesn't necessarily mean that when you become fixed afterwards, the being is not beautiful, right? And it's not like, there's different kinds of beauty here in this reality. There's based on the dimensions you see. So for example, for me, there's a visible beauty, there's an invisible beauty, and there's something that is so inconceivable that it's beautiful by the nature of how it's being. Okay, the more you energetically relate, the more reality is being for you. It's like saying, what can an energy do? Energy can just be. But what can a person do? Many things. Everybody is using the energy that they are, the life force that they're given, for some sort of work. Okay? The work can be individual, the work can be collective, the work can even be inconceivable. This is more in the realm of Jnani Yogi, right? Which is another way of saying that the individual has interdimensional tutoring. So, I guess where my attention has come to is this view that the species has to be okay with what is broken. And it also has to be not okay with remaining broken. If we identify based on the past, it's very hard to, change. If I think I've been this kind of person, that specific kind of person, then it's as if my mind already has a conviction, right? But sometimes in this life, I think this is the blessing of the future, that the future is unknown and our past is known. An individual can say so many things, about the past, verified through, let's say, history and whatnot. But when it comes to the future, that's when it's unknown. Right now, the remarkable idea could be that we cannot fix a world how can broken people fix the world, right? So 8 billion beings, I mean, let me say it this way. let's say we are hilariously like a glass species, a species made of glass. And so at some point, individuals on this planet may experience some sort of breaking. It is very important that we create a sort of system that, let's say, in 100 years of life, at some point, whether in the middle or whatever, the individual experiences some sort of breakdown. Okay, so that means we have people before they have been broken, and we have people after that they have been broken, and we have people who are breaking. Okay, and so what is very fascinating about the human experience is our ability to communicate. And really what it is, what I find that this era, this moment we're all alive now, is teaching us that, oh, species who are under the impression that you're moving through an arrow of time from past to the future, it is true. But at the same time, the human ability to communicate bridges parallel dimensions of knowing. And you know, it is the case, of course, any human being that tries to get close to any other human being, you know, it's you start off, you know, seeing the good things, and then the closer you get, you begin to see, you know, all the things you couldn't see before, right? But all of it is necessary, right, because of the dualistic situation. What I'm trying to say is the human species can develop a system through communication. We have the internet, right? And it would be this thing that the species has this attitude where we glorify goodness, and we make bad seem as if something to avoid our whole life, right? But we have to understand that this reality has chaotic variables and ordered variables, right? That means human beings are not just here to experience a world where things don't change, just like an airplane, right? Any moment there can be turbulence. So I guess there's multiple strategies here. Okay, one strategy is the individuals fix themselves, and at some point they realize that it's no longer a sort of broken setting. Okay, another strategy is we don't take how we've been broken seriously. This is something the species has been doing. And another strategy is we create backup systems, or we create some sort of archives of information that the human experience has gone through. My insight follows this idea that if I accept, all right, let me say it this way: accepting death is not enough. Surpassing the fear of death and one's own exit is not enough of a response to the great work of this species in this universal sector. Why is it not enough? In other words, what I'm saying is, if you were a being that you surpassed the fear of death and the fear of the unknown, and you became a being completely detached from all the events in the outer realms and the inner realms. Sure, you may feel free. This is the grand illusion that the absence of responsibility or the lack of responsibility feels like freedom. It could be that we could all be like, yo, man, we enjoy ourselves and, the future is going to figure it out. But guess what? Everybody's been doing that. Everybody's been postponing the necessary critical thinking throughout the lifetime. And when I say critical thinking, you have to reset. You have to reinvent the wheel of your own meaning in this life, right? So the reason I'm saying death is not enough is because there needs to be a sort of strategy proposed. There's this sentence they say before, somebody leaves somewhere, right? They're trying to get their affairs in order. Similarly, I find that as 8 billion temporary beings, in this world, it's important that we all get our affairs in order from the moment we're born. But we're not taught this. I had people, I'd seen in this lifetime people, praise the idea of the individual, praise the idea of their family, praise the idea of their nation, praise the idea of like their specific group or whatever, their ideological system. But at some point I was like, yo, where is that missing? Where is that feeling